Good evening, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to another episode of Rift Amps. Morning, everyone. Right, so busy week this week because I'm actually closed next week off on a nice family holiday. So I've got a lot to get done. First job today was had an order for one of the B stock 69 fuzzes. This one is going all the way to Japan. So I've just gone ahead and got that done this morning. Really happy with it. I biased transistors. The temperature in this room is around 19, 20 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to let that sit for the rest of the afternoon. Then I'll go back and double check the bias on them. As you know, the bias does change with temperature. So we need to make sure that's stable. And then I can get that boxed up, shipped out, off to Japan. Job done. But yeah, this was a B stock one. I mean, it's just that little mark there. That's the only reason it's B stock. So, anyway, 69 Fuzz off to Japan. Right, making some progress on this next Ainsley Lister build. So, you remember last week I was doing the board. So, I've still got to do the underboard wires, the twisties on top. So, put that to one side for the moment. But I've been working on the chassis. And what I've done is I've got the, zoom you in a bit, I've got the filter cans wired in, I've done the output sockets, so I've got the screen and grid resistors on, cathode bias sensing resistors I should say, got the output transformer anodes hooked up, I've got the choke and output transformer center tap done to the cans, and I've got my twisties there. So what I'm working on at the moment is the on-off switch. Now this is a special switch from APEM, which is an on standby off. So in one position the amp is off, you flick it to the middle position and that's standby, and then you've got play mode in the third position. And so you've got two switches either side and it activates one side then the other. So when you put it into standby mode, it applies mains voltage to the amplifier and it starts to warm everything up. And then when you flick it to play mode, the high voltage is applied. But crucially what happens is and this is something for a lot of designers, the bias supply is already working whilst the amplifier is in standby mode, so you don't get any runaway. Anyway, so I've got to wire that in, and I'm also doing the IEC socket on the rear, so hopefully there's enough light for you to see that. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on this morning. Then I've got to do bits and pieces on the rear panel. I need to get my pots in along the front and get all of those sorted. Make the rest of any connections that I can do in the chassis, then I can get the board done and drop that in. So that's kind of the process and where we are. But this amp is what are we doing with this one? If you're coming to the Birmingham Guitar Show at the very start of March, is it the 2nd and 3rd? It's whatever weekend that is, 2nd and 3rd of March, 1st, 2nd and 3rd. This particular amp should be on display for people who want to come and try out. I know Ainsley's going to be there as well, so it'll be interesting. If you want to come down and meet Ainsley, try the amp out. I'm really looking forward to that show, actually. I haven't done it for a couple of years, so yeah, exciting. Anyway, cracking on with this, and then I've got to get back onto a couple of repairs. Right, so I'm just working on this PR18 build, so I'm just prepping the chassis for all of the bits and bobs, and somebody has emailed and asked if I would kindly explain how do I cut out the square or rectangular holes in a chassis for IEC sockets. And you do that with one of these devices. This is it's a chassis punch is what it is, and I'll show you how they work. I've got two sizes. One of them is for the smaller IEC style. And this one here, Big Beast, is for the larger IEC, which I use pretty much on every model now. And I use it because it's got the inbuilt fuse holder, so I don't need to use a separate fuse for the mains. Okay, so this tool is an absolute essential if you're building amplifiers on a regular basis. I can't stress that enough. Now, problem is they're not cheap. This particular one is I've just looked the price up. It's £290 for this one. Yes, they are that expensive. But I bought this one 3.5 years ago now, and it's not blunt. It works great, and it punches the chassis perfectly. So I mean, it's paid for itself. God knows how many times over. So you know, I'm always gonna use it. So you can see it's perfectly sized for the IEC hole that I need to cut. So how does it work? Well, first thing you've got to do is on your chassis is you find the center point of where you want it to be, and on these I go 87mm in. Now the chassis is 45mm tall, so I go 23mm up from the bottom, and all that does is, rather than being bang on the center line, it sets it 0.5mm slightly towards the top, and it just gives that extra room underneath when you're wiring, should you need it. Anyway, so what you've got to do is you drill a pilot hole, then you enlarge it to 16mm. And then we will assemble the unit. So the cutter, this is the cutter. This goes on the inside of the chassis. Make sure we get the orientation right. And the receiver, as it were, goes on the outside of the chassis. So you get this unit here. This is the bit that you end cranking on with the with your ratchet spanner. So that goes through there, through the hole, cutter in, and you can see it's a D-shaped hole, so you can only go one way, and then nut on the back. Okay, so what do you do is, once that's in place, I have to do it off the edge of the table. And that just ensures that you've got enough room to swing your ratchet spanner around. So you kind of just snug it up, just so it starts to bite, but you can still move it slightly if you need to. Then I use these two right angles either side just to make sure that the cutter is indeed square, and then you've just got to get the thing snugged up properly, and that should be good to go. Then all you got to do, wrong way, is crank around on it. There you go, you heard it pop. And we're done. And we end up with a nice square hole, rectangular hole, for our IEC socket, which goes on there. Then what I do is I'll drill the two 3mm mounting holes for the hardware. And that's how you do it. So, you saw how incredibly easy that was to do. Worth every penny. Absolutely. But it's not for one-off purchases, one-off uses, sorry. If you're buying one, you've got to be making a lot of amplifiers. So if you are in need of having a IEC hole cut and you can get to the workshop, I'll happily do it for you for a small fee and send you on your way. So if you were thinking about ordering one of these, as you know, All of the A stocks have now sold and gone. I've got 2 more B stock enclosures left, and that's it. I'm not having any more made. So they're listed on the website. If you want one of the 69 fuzzes and you're happy with B stock, get online and get one ordered. So I had an interesting email earlier on today asking if I'd be interested in building a Hiwatt, the 50 watt DR504 OL model. Now, I'm not really that clued up on Hiwatts, so you'll have to bear with me, but I think the OL designation means it's got the extra gain stage after the tone stack, or is it before the tone stack? Anyway, working on this, really excited actually, and what he wants to do, because if you're not aware, the Hiwatt chassis is quite large and so is the cabinet, and he wants to know if I'll be able to squeeze it into my standard JTM 45 style chassis, the same one that we do the 18 watt in the Black Hawk, the Wheelhouse, the Hawker, the Ainsley Lister Signature, that chassis. And so I've been working on a layout here for the main board, and I can get most of the components that I need to, in fact nearly all of them, onto a board that's 13.8 inches wide. I always do my boards 2.5 inches tall, and then I just make them as long or as short as I need them to be. So I can do it as we'll call it a 14-inch board. The Ainsley Lister board is 14.5, so I know I've got the space in here. All the transformers are going to be mounted on this side, no drop throughs, so I've got quite a lot of space to play with actually. Now, it's a 4 preamp valve amplifier, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 output valves, same as the Ainsley Lister. And it's got 7 controls on the front, 2 volumes, master, treble, middle bass, and a presence. So it's a 7 knobber, same as the Ainsley Lister. So actually on paper, this might work. So anyway, I've been going through the design, a couple of interesting things and something that's unique to Hiwatts, or maybe not unique to Hiwatts, but something that other manufacturers tend not to see, I think is the best way to put it, is that the phase inverter is not cathode biased, it's actually fixed bias, and it uses an ECC83 triode to supply that fixed bias to the grids of the phase inverter. Really, really interesting, and apparently that's a really key part of the sound of these amplifiers. So I'm keen to retain that rather than go to the more standard phase inverter biasing method. Other things to note, it uses BYX94 solid state rectification diodes. We'll just go to 1N4007s, just 2 on each side rather than one single one. It's got a standby switch. Not sure whether I'm going to retain that, or if we just bypass that altogether and put a mute switch in instead, which is kind of what people want. So there's an easier way we could mute the amplifier. But anyway, we'll look at that further on. The bias supply, want to update that just so it's a bit more robust. So that's what I've done on here. Gone for the more common Marshall style layout, and here is where the bias pot's going to be. Couple of power resistors on the board. Here's the phase inverter section. It's actually quite a large part of the board, that actually. Tone stack. I've put, as I like to do, the final 2 coupling caps, not coupling caps, they're filter caps on the B plus rail that feed the preamp. I always like to put them on the board closer to the preamp rather than further downstream, which I just like to split them up that way. Also means I can ground them with the preamp rather than further downstream. So that's what I've done there. What was the other thing I was looking at? Oh yes, so with those on the board, I've got to find where we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 filter caps. Haven't got room on the board. I can't make the board long enough. The board has to be too long for the chassis, essentially. So we're going to do... wrong way around. We're going to do filter cans, which will be... On the easy lister, we use 2 filter cans. All I've got to do, because there's no choke in this amplifier, I know I've got the chassis space for 2 more. So you've got B plus A, which is 2 220 microfarad cans in a totem pole configuration. And then here's the really interesting one. Nodes B and C. Node B is a 50 microfarad in a totem pole with a 220. That's how that's configured. Or do you know what I've done? Have I left off? Yes, I have. That shouldn't be a... across it. So there should be, sorry, a resistor there, 220k. That's what that needs to be. Anyway, yeah, so that side's in a totem pole configuration with a 220 microfarad at the bottom, but then side C, is that a totem? Is that? Yes, it is. Of course it is. Silly me. Yeah, they both are. So that's how we're going to do it. So we can do it with just the 4 cans rather than the 5 that the original Hiwatts had. So saving some space there. Sorry, I'm figuring this out as we go along. What else are we going to do? The other thing, oh yeah, it was these. It's the 2 inputs, the normal and the brilliant channel. So the normal input feeds one side of V1, and the brilliant channel feeds the second side. But you'll notice you've got grid leak resistors, the 1 megs are standard, but you've got no grid stoppers. So we need to think about what we're going to put there. And one good method is, rather than putting, usually you'll see the 268Ks in parallel if it was a 4-hole, or if it's a 2-hole, 1 input, 1 socket per side, you'd have a 33k. God, I can't write like that in there. But what I like to do sometimes is put a 10k in, but with something like a 250 picofarad to ground, just to bleed off any high end and RF that we don't like there. It's a really interesting method. You can look it up in Merlin's book. Anyway, yeah, so that's that. Sorry I've been waffling, but I'm really excited by this. Don't think we'll need the slave out, so we can just have 4/8 and a 16 ohm output, be head only, not going to do a combo. But yeah, actually, now I've laid this out and thought about it, I think it's possible. Not keen on the value of the screen stoppers. 100 ohms, far too low for an EL34, especially running at that kind of voltage. So I would be comfortable with a 1k in there. I think that's where that needs to be. The grid stoppers, 22k, yeah, maybe. We'll see how that goes. Seeing what kind of reliability improvements we can do to this circuit whilst retaining the original tone and sound of this amplifier. So yeah, sorry, that's 9 minutes of me waffling. Anyway, cracking on with this. Do you remember the PR50, the B-stock amp that came back from the Netherlands? And well, I put it up for sale and it's finally sold. Good news. And the customer decided, and I agreed, that we would get a new cabinet made because he wanted a slight change of aesthetic anyway. rather than going for the blonde and brown look. Wants to go for what we call the tuxedo look, which was transition. It was with the black Tolex, but with the what we call wheat cloth. Anyway, so that cabinet has now arrived. Great news. So I can start getting this drilled, speaker fitted, handle on, reverb tanking, all that kind of stuff. I was just giving the chassis a quick check over, and I didn't notice that the faceplate had indeed suffered some damage. So I've got to get another faceplate for it. But yeah, it's not an issue. It's all part of the fun. So we get this all sorted. New faceplate has been ordered anyway. So when that comes in, I can get this thing turned around and out to the customer, who, fair play to him, has been very patient, because, you know, I said to him when he ordered it, we'll get you a new cabinet. That's going to take a couple of weeks. So he's been patient enough for that. So a couple more days waiting for a faceplate isn't going to be the end of the world. The other thing I wanted to show you quickly was we had this dropped in over the weekend. This is a Fender Pro Reverb silver plate amp. It's in pretty gnarly road-worn condition, which I think makes them look even better, to be honest. But yeah, it's got the old flappy grill cloth. Anyway, so what's it in for? It's blowing fuses. It blew a fuse, customer got scared, called me up, said could I sort it. So we're going to do that. He said he doesn't know if the filter caps have ever been replaced, so he wants me to check and quote him on that while it's in. He would like a half power switch fitting, which I seem to think will be possible, because we can... it's got mid control on the back as well. Look, someone's put a mid control there. So there's a way I can do it without drilling any holes. I just need to work out what that is. And there was something else, but I can't remember. Anyway, yes, pretty cool amp. Serial number A17126. I haven't done any research on the amp yet, so I don't know what year it is, but it is a slightly later one, because it hasn't got the drip edge aluminium frame. It's also had a... it doesn't run V1, which is, again, a common thing for this, but it's had a switching pot put in to switch on and off the tremolo on the front, rather than using the foot switch. Interesting. So anyway, we're going to go through this properly in another video and show you it in more detail, but I thought you'd all be interested to see this Pro Reverb. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. I know this is kind of an extra bonus midweek video, but as I said, I am off next week, so there won't be a video. There will be a video this Sunday coming, but not the following one, I don't think, but we'll see. But anyway, I filmed so much already, and it's only Tuesday at the moment, that I've got enough to put another video out. So why not? You may as well have it and enjoy it. Anyway, me and this Fender are off, and I shall catch you all at the next one.